This is a jawbreaker. It's the most addictive candy known to man. Many a scheme was scammed over these balls of sugar, and today we're going to determine whether these schemes were scams or hustles. You know, as a kid, I wasn't really allowed to have jawbreakers. I think my parents thought they were actually gonna break my jaw. I mean, even making this video, I got a text asking if I bought a jawbreaker. This cost me 20 bucks. I'm doing this for you. And let's really try a jawbreaker. That tastes like paint. I don't know what paint tastes like, but that tastes like paint. This is like a smooth ball of linoleum. Like, this is like a tile in your school they turned into a sphere and sold to you. This is like licking the floor. It is kind of good though. So we're gonna go through season 3 of Ed, Edd and Eddy to determine whether the Eds were actually scamming the other kids, or if they were really out here with some genuine hustles. The links to parts 1 and 2 can be found in the description, but watch this one first. Like, you're already here, you don't want to lose your place. So let's start with episode 53, Wish You Were Ed. This episode starts with Rolf talking about how he misses his life back in the old world, and how he doesn't really fit in living in the cul-de-sac.
I grow tired of this cold cement, this twisted steel of industry, this confusing leisure delights, and your Elitist customs.
You know, it's actually really sad when you put it that way. So the Eds try to cheer Rolf up, which is a nice way of saying they scam him out of 75 cents by pretending they're in a magical bowl of Chunky Puffs that grant him his wish of returning to his homeland. A lot of people speculate what country Rolf's supposed to be from, some thinking he may be Romanian since his shirt is the same colors as the flag, but the truth is, Rolf is a bit of a vague and fictional mashup of cultures based on creator Danny Antonucci's childhood growing up as a first-generation Canadian with Italian immigrant parents. A lot of the comedy in this episode comes from the Eds trying to play along with Rolf's outlandish culture, like nearly impaling yourself on a pole to bargain for fish, or playing a folk song that has stuck with me my entire life.
I can't dance, Rolf.
That's my horse! Give it up for Rolf!
That's my horse?
Yes, that's my horse!
Yes, this is a scam, but there was good intentions behind it. Like, if the Eds sold it as a way for Rolf to have fun and immerse himself in his culture for a day, maybe he'd still pay for this. But yeah, as it stands, I think I gotta call it a scam, at least just for being a lie and not being honest with Rolf. In Momma's Little Ed, Eddy and Ed write fake sticky notes, sending Double D all around, like putting a suit on Wilbur, and honestly, new profile picture right there, that's pretty swag. These sticky notes also cause Double D to get the hammer of discipline.
What is that, Rolf? The hat of discipline. Do you live in a cave?
Double D's by far my favorite character in the show, if not like one of my favorite characters of all time. And this episode perfectly captures what makes him so great, since he's clever enough to catch on to the fact that the other Eds are probably messing with him, but he's also able to play into it, and he plays into it by moving in with Eddy and annoying him, like giving Eddy the ultimatum of either watching his friend be homeless, or letting him now sleep in his bed and get a foot massage at night. But yeah, I don't think I can call this a scam since no money was exchanged, and the Eds are basically scamming each other, but this really is a great episode, and the pace of the show now in season 3 is quite literally perfect. Like, there's just this subtle flow to every scene where everything can breathe, but something's always happening. Like, there's this one part where Double D's running around the kitchen, frantically taking care of the sticky notes from his parents, and the Eds just watch him for 20 seconds. Barely anything happens, but it might be my favorite part of the episode just because of how Ed scratches the back of his head as his idle bored animation. With his tongue. Once Upon an Ed starts with the Eds stuck in Johnny's wall, telling him a bedtime story of how they got here. It's super fun to have this experimental, non-linear narrative throughout the episode. Like, we try to learn why the episode starts with the Eds stuck in Johnny's wall through a series of flashbacks, but the big kicker is all 3 Eds are unreliable narrators. Like, Eddy's story has him as a rich king among the peasants, even backhanding Sarah here, which is crazy. I don't remember that, but for whatever reason, something that's always stuck with with me and my friends was Eddy's Jawbreaker vault, specifically the Japan flavored Jawbreaker. I remember playing Scribble.io with my friends where you draw the words and guess them, and my friend drew this for Japan, and somehow everyone got it right away. Like, this show is magical, man. Double D's retelling is probably the most accurate of how they stole Jimmy's Jawbreaker this day, but it's clearly not too accurate since Eddy and Ed just cower before him the whole time. You can kind of tell Double D didn't say any of this in the moment, but he thought of it hours later while taking a shower or something. I also love the subtle changes in the art style and environments with each character. Like with Double D here, it looks like a blueprint come to life with subtle little angles and shapes sketched onto the backgrounds. But before we can learn how exactly this relates to them being stuck in the wall, Ed takes over with his retelling, which is just a monster movie parody, which is kind of how Ed sees the world. It's a really strange scene with or without context.
Yum, yum, yum.
Cankers! Ed, your story's getting weird!
The episode ends with the Kanker sisters showing up on the other side of the wall somehow, as the Eds try to escape, just breaking more holes in Johnny's wall as he's now fast asleep after his bedtime story. You know, I honestly can't even tell if this episode was a scam or not, since none of the Ed boys can actually say what happened on account of being crazy kids, but it really feels like they probably scammed Gimme at least. And you know what? Since it's my courtroom, if I ask 3 defendants to tell me what happened, and they told me 3 wildly different, damn near incoherent stories, what other decision can I make besides guilty? It's a little hard to tell what actually happened in the episode, but going with my gut, I'm gonna have to call this Jawbreaker vault a guilty verdict as a scam. In For Your Ed Only, the episode starts with the Eds trying to charge Johnny for a bubblegum bubble hot air balloon ride, but Kevin slingshots them out of the air, leaving the Eds in Sarah's room where they find her diary. Johnny falls to the ground and ends up in China, which will always be funny to me. Kinda interesting to see what China looks like in the Ed style. The whole neighborhood starts searching for Sarah's diary, which Sarah eventually finds on the Eds, who try to fly away using the big bubblegum bubble. And now that I think about it, I have no idea how the Eds are flying here. Double D chews the bubble gum, and Ed speeds up the process by blowing air into his mouth, which blows up his hat like a balloon. Is there like a hole in the top of his head where the air is going to? Can we add this to what's under Double D's hats, theories, and conspiracies? So the Eds eventually fly back down since Double D can't hold his breath forever, getting the Eds stuck to Ed's basement wall, along with Johnny and Plank.
I like the way Johnny's stuck.
Boy, Frank, how the heck did we ever end up here? If you weren't so scared of turning into chopsticks, we'd still be in China.
I feel like the hot air balloon didn't really have enough legs to actually be considered the scam or hustle of the episode, and stealing a diary is pretty scammy in the grand scheme of life, but I think I'd kind of have to say this episode's a non-applicable entry regardless of our morals. But it was really cool to see a little bit of Sarah's diary, like what she likes to draw and what she dreams about.
Eddy drawing! And another! That ain't me!
Seems Sarah would like to pursue a career in animation.
What a loser!
In episode 57, It Came From Outer Ed, the episode has one of the more unique premises I can think of 57 episodes in, where of all people, Ed has an idea for a scam. It goes about how you'd expect, like with a Q to mark the spot instead of an X, cause Ed really doesn't know his alphabet or something. Ed's idea of a scam is trying to reenact a curse from a comic he read, eating/sacrificing Jimmy's stuffed animal, so all the other kids run away and Rolf's childhood pet, a giant clam named Bobo.
Was that a giant clam?
The episode has a pretty wacky ending, with the Eds all about to get mauled by these crows, which have mysteriously all showed up to the construction site, giving us one of the very few times an animal shows up that isn't one of Rolf's farm animals. I think I gotta mark this as a scam since Ed sought to scam the others and ended up making everyone's life worse. Like, yeah, he might be mixing up a scam and a curse, but he also mixes up his Q's and X's. Like, I don't even know how that happens. In 3 Squares and an Ed, Eddy and Double D find the archive of their failed inventions from the past so far, like the elevator booth. We see Eddy get a volcano stuck to his head and smacks Double D, and just listen to the sumo sound effect in its full glory here. This sound effect is actually from MTV's Liquid Television, a collection of animated shorts I'd recommend if you like experimental animation. This short, Genie Junkie, is accredited as the origin of the sumo sound.
Got anything imported?
And this line is actually by Lee Takar, the voice of Yakety Yak, Bling Bling Boy, and George of the Jungle, to name some random ones that'll make you say, wow, I remember those now. They were definitely something. I've seen several comments give a translation of what they believe it means, and while others claim it means nothing and is a bunch of bullshito, I've read a bunch of comments reading that they say it says, So wara wara katedo sumero sumo do wa. But it's roughly translated as Subalua, which people also believe is just a bunch of gibberish. I've played the clip slowed down a bunch of times. I guess this sounds like what it's saying in Japanese, though I cannot verify that's what the translation would come out to by any means. But yeah, the more you know. I'm kinda glad I wasn't a little bit younger when I first saw this episode, because one of my best friends had this same kind of laundry chute in his room as a kid, and I hope I wasn't dumb enough to have had the desire to jump down one like Eddy. Sarah and Gimme are guarding Ed's house because we learn he's currently grounded, and I love that Johnny dresses as a leprechaun and randomly distracts them, like he's really an honorary Ed boy. Really helping them out in the most random of situations. We then get, bar none, my favorite joke from the entirety of Ed, Edd, and Eddy.
Halfway there, boys. Now all we have to do is go up the... What happened to the stairs?
My parents took them down because I am grounded.
That's disturbing.
Where do you think Ed's parents could have possibly put his staircase? I can't think of any way to even remove it besides sawing it down into little pieces or just destroying it altogether. This has to be the most insane, random, and hilarious joke. Like, I see this and just say, man, animation is beautiful. I don't think we can call breaking out of the home a hustle or a scam, so honestly, let's just mark this as a non-applicable and move on. Dueling Eds starts with Eddy creating a school of kung fu, charging Johnny only a quarter for this, which honestly has to be a hustle. I love this little poster in the background of the dojo with a priced menu of different things like it's takeout. I can learn a kick for 25 cents or a hi-ya for 50. A savvy viewer like yourself may realize this room and scene is like an amalgamation of martial arts and cultures, like they're teaching kung fu, which is Chinese, in what looks to be more like a Japanese dojo with these elements like a ninja pose and these mats, which I assume are a cardboard recreation of Japanese tatami mats. So yeah, this is a hustle, but an unsuccessful hustle since all the kids go to Rolf's yard as he shows off his own culture with these traditional sea cucumber balls. Eddy almost immediately disgraces him and his culture by just flinging one of these at the fence, and as we know, an angry Rolf may be one of the most powerful characters in the whole series. Like, he's rivaled only by an angry Ed, Sarah, and the Kanker sisters, and here he wants all the smoke, just brutally smacking Eddy with a fish down to his last life points to regain his honor. The episode ends with the Eds partaking more respectfully in Rolf's culture, putting eels down their pants, which we learn Ed's allergic to, giving us this horrifying ending.
I think I'm allergic to eels.
His face!
Can somebody scratch my scales?
Despite this, I'd still have to call the Kung Fu School a hustle, so let's move on. In Dimwit Ed, Double D grows increasingly concerned with how mindless the cul-de-sacs become, beginning to hold his own classes in the alley for the neighborhood. This episode's an interesting predecessor to the show actually taking place at a school in the later season, and it's pretty interesting to center only around the kids still, with Double D as the teacher here. He tries to motivate these students with a scavenger hunt for a special prize, which the kids all assume is a jawbreaker, but actually ends up being a diploma. I really do feel bad for Double D getting beat up here, like he really just wants to help the kids differentiate between a football and an alligator, or a sprinkler and an iguana, so I really have to call this episode overall a hustle, like he was really looking out for their best interests. and will work for Ed. Ed works on Rolf's farm, and in a bit of a twist, we actually get Rolf scamming Ed. Kinda. He docks Ed's pay whenever possible, and I kinda sympathize for Rolf. Like, Ed really doesn't know what he's doing at all, but Rolf is so abusive here, it's kind of a bad look. Though I guess Rolf is a pretty different kid when he's working as opposed to just chilling like a villain. The gang tries to help Ed peel all these potatoes before Rolf comes back, or else he'll get yet another pay reduction, so they build a pretty amazing potato julienning contraption, which they still get a pay cut for, in part because Rolf just wanted these potatoes peeled, not julienned, and in part because Eddy and Double D weren't hired by Rolf, just Ed. You know, it's pretty crazy to get 3 people working for you for the price of 1, and getting mad at it and cutting that pay altogether. Like, this is just evil, honestly. The kids protest Rolf's working conditions, ultimately resulting in a compromise to be made between the parties, where Ed gets promoted to a supervisor position, and Double D and Eddy assume new positions as honorary nincompoops. Pretty crazy that even Ed can see how bad of a worker Eddy is, though.
You've learned well, Turkey Eyes.
This is genuinely one of the tougher entries in Scam vs. Hustle. Like, Rolf does have a point at times, they are pretty bad. Like, you ask them to peel a potato and they build a contraption. But I think by the end of the episode, thanks in large part to Double D's negotiating, I can confidently call this a hustle. Ed Edd, in a way, starts with the Eds scamming Kevin with a new hot bike that just falls apart, and Kevin swears his revenge. So yeah, this is clearly a scam. Like, we could just move on if we wanted.
Oh my god!
The rest of the episode has the Eds chasing a balloon all throughout the cul-de-sac, most notably breaking up Jimmy and Sarah's fake airline flight that Johnny and Plank are riding on, which is a really fun, cute little scene. But yeah, to have the whole episode centered around something so simple as chasing a balloon is something so ingenious few shows besides Ed and Eddy could ever pull off. Like, I love these idiots so much. It really goes to show how literally anything can be entertaining with great animation, staging, sound effects, music, jokes, characters. Okay, I guess that's a bit more complicated than I thought. Never mind, but yeah, this is great. In X Marks the Ed, the episode starts with the Eds trying to catch fish out of Ed's pond in his backyard to make some cash, which I guess is a hustle. This fortunately gets cut short when Eddy realizes he has a pimple on the top of his head, which is so unfortunate. Like, to have just 3 strands of hair and still have a pimple is a crazy combo. Johnny starts charging 25 cents for other people to go see this, and it's like, Johnny, I thought you were a bro. It's an absolute hustle though. Look at the drawing of Eddy with the pimple on his head. Double D tries to help fix this, but everything just makes it worse and worse. Really, Rolf is the only one to not laugh at Eddy's disfigurement, and technically cures it with this remedy, at a cost, of course.
What happened to my head?
It is so puny!
I guess I gotta call this episode overall a hustle. Even though trying to catch fish in your own little yard pond is so stupid, I almost want to call this non-applicable, but intent plays a larger role in my decisions than execution. Also, I gotta talk about the title card for this episode because it's so cool. If you rotate the title card, it's not just a pizza, but a pizza face, a term for people that may have pimples, kind of resembling a greasy pepperoni pizza. Gotta be one of my favorite title cards of the whole series. From Here to Ed starts with the Eds making a winter wonderland for the town, which I think is a really awesome hustle. I think I take for granted just how talented the Eds are at times. Like, it's genuinely impressive how they make these little worlds. This makes it all the more unfortunate that Kevin derails the whole thing by just grabbing his ball and causing Ed's sled to change course. Eddy kinda has every right to be mad at Kevin here, and of all the characters, Kevin really has the least redeemable moments, at least so far, which makes the Eds trying to prank Kevin for the rest of the episode a little more of an interesting scenario, depending on whether you're on Eddy or Kevin's side. Also, look at the turtle on top of Ed's head here. Like, this is so dang cute. Add that to the random animals in the show list. The Eds try to get their revenge on Kevin, like Double D smacking him with Ed's lunch that's been lying around since last year, but he doesn't have the heart to do it. My favorite part of this scene and episode is that Kevin's genuinely chill with Double D and is interested in talking to him. Like, dare I say, the two would even even be friends if it wasn't for Eddy. After all these plans are thwarted, Eddy extends a hand to call a truce and make up with Kevin, who just slams the door on his hand, and honestly, I can't even blame Kevin. What if Eddy had like a shocker in his hand or something? As much as I love Eddy, the show's perfectly balanced where I feel I really don't mind seeing either Kevin or Eddy quote unquote lose here. It's just a battle of wills, and I'm here for the ride. So yeah, I gotta mark the Winter Wonderland as a hustle. Let's move on. In Boys Will Be Eds, the boys in the neighborhood are all especially infatuated with Naz today, trying to win her love by letting her win in baseball or shaving her name into Victor.
Blow a kiss to your fans, Naz. Okay.
The Eds have one final plan to get Naz to notice them, playing a song for her outside her window, which is one of my favorite scenes of the season.
Oh, Naz! You are so red! Oh, baby! Stop it!
You guys rock!
Gimme?
Honestly, making a band to win the heart of Naz could be a hustle, but I still want to keep this to just the business enterprises throughout the show, so I'm marking this as non-applicable, but this episode always kind of makes me appreciate Naz a little more. Like, she's just a chill gal. In Ed or Tails, Ed wins 2 free jawbreakers from the back of his comic book, and they argue about which of them deserves the second one. Ed, being the true friend he is, offers to give both jawbreakers to Eddy and Ed, but Double D knows how screwed up this would be and says they'll divide them into 3 equal pieces. But like, they're called jawbreakers, they're obviously extremely hard, they can even break your jaw. So, since they can't break up these jawbreakers, Rolf sets up a tournament of bravery between the Eds, and it gets pretty intense. Like, Double D has this lawnmower contraption, and he's fully willing to mow over Eddy's leg if he doesn't move it. He's about that life. Ed wins the competition by just simply walking to the left, but the 3 of them still fight, launching the jawbreaker into the river. Later that night, Ed claims to have found the jawbreaker, eating it for himself, and it's a slug. I guess we can add this to the list of background animals in the show, but like, that's disgusting. It crawls through the little balloon knot thing in Ed's cheek, and I don't even want to think about this anymore. Oh my god. This is another non-applicable entry. Like, we could argue it's a bit scammy that Ed won the competition and they still fight for the jawbreaker, but yeah, it's pretty cool to see Eddy and Double D face off like this. Their rivalry has a really fun dynamic of like the ultimate inventor versus the ultimate cheater, and naturally neither of them are gonna win. In Gimme Gimme Never Ed, the Eds try to teach Gimme how to surf, and it doesn't go very well. I don't think I'd call it a scam, Jimmy's just bad at it. Plank also wants to learn from the Eds, so they do their best to give Plank the best day of his life, like going in these bumper cars, which is just a high chair with an inner tube on it, or having Plank parachute above these hungry termites, cause we learn he's an absolute thrill seeker. I feel like this episode can only be described as a scam that turns into a hustle. Like, they kind of put Plank in danger all throughout, but he really does have a great time, at least according to Johnny. The episode ends with this giant cardboard roller coaster. Plank actually says he'll give the Eds $5 to ride down with him, which is actually just a ploy for Plank to knock down the stopper and send the Eds in this shopping cart down this death trap. Like, not only is Plank sentient, he's evil. The Eds might be trying to pinch a little more money out of Plank, but overall I'd have to say the events of the day are a hustle if we're to believe Plank actually is a thrill seeker, as the Eds have accommodated for. My Fair Ed starts with Eddy and Ed being especially reckless, messing up everyone's day in the neighborhood, with Kevin threatening to beat them all up if Double D can't reform his friends. Double D teaches them manners, in part by sticking band-aids on their heads that he rips off when they misbehave.
What a load of... What is this slop anyways? I thought we were gonna eat something, not bury it.
My mother made that soup.
Ouch!
It actually kind of works on Ed, but Eddy is just too evil and actually becomes worse. Maybe this shows the carrot is better than the stick, or maybe there's no point in trying to get Eddy or Ed to ever learn anything ever. Kinda crazy that Ed runs straight through Kevin's bike and his first thought is to go beat up Double D. Like, I feel like he was really given an impossible task here. It's a bit tricky to rule a scam or a hustle when the Eds are on different sides of the equation, and while I'd argue that Double D's out here hustling, trying to reform his friends, albeit ineffectively, I think I gotta mark this episode as a non-applicable entry. In Rockabye Ed, this episode starts with Ed having this trippy nightmare where Johnny is his mother, which maybe reveals to us what Ed's mom looks like, besides her face, you know? Ed's freaked out by Johnny throughout the episode, and while it's irrational, I feel like I subconsciously feel similarly when I have a nightmare involving someone I know. We've had some psychological episodes of the show before, but I think this episode kinda leans more into the psyche of it all more than any other episode. Like, this final scene of Johnny and Ed is so dramatic, actually revealing Ed's nightmare, along with the rest of the episode, was all inside Johnny's nightmare this whole time. Maybe this is to insinuate Johnny's scared of Ed or his mom. I don't know, maybe that helps illuminate why Johnny's a bit of an outsider who talks to a plank of wood, but yeah, this episode's gotta be a non-applicable. Not a whole lot happened here, on top of this episode actually not happening and stuff. In episode 70, Ed 11, the Eds break into the room of Eddy's older brother, and this is one of the coolest cartoon bedrooms. Definitely up there with some others like the bedroom from Hey Arnold. It's full of random junk like this camel, or a brick wall hidden behind the curtains, and they even have a little sandy beach corner. Like, this feels more like a Nintendogs or Animal Crossing room to me, though I do feel like you just track sand everywhere. Also, according to these marks on his wall, Eddy's older brother has been on 13 dates at least. Similar to the classic musical posters Eddy has in his room, like of Tom Jones, Eddy's older brother has a poster of Nana Mouskouri, and without spoiling anything, this poster's really funny to see, because if we assume Eddy's older brother likes not only her, but also dirt rock, he has quite the range in culture, which is really surprising based on how he acts. But we'll get to that when we get to that. They find a treasure map inside this trophy, which they're unable to decipher until Ed incidentally throws Eddy in front of the projector, in tandem with this map, leading them to the Kanker Sisters trailer park as the final destination. Also, I feel like I should quickly mention that Double D keeps tabs on everyone in town. Like, do with that info what you will. In the end, we learn Eddy's brother's treasure is a suitcase full of wishbones, which is presumably just an elaborate prank, ending the episode with Eddy being trapped inside the Kanker's trailer, as Ed and Double D can only watch in agony. It's a fun episode, and honestly is made way more entertaining to come back to after actually meeting Eddy's older brother, so yeah, spoilers, but like, come on. There's no scams here, so let's move on. In the luck of the Ed, Eddy's forced to clean his room and needs to hide his magazines, which Ed helps him hide, except he can't remember where he hid them, so the episode's examining Ed's brain, both metaphorically and literally. It'd probably be easier if Ed didn't have literal sandboxes in his ears, though. Eddy's increasing paranoia causes him to doubt everyone, suspecting Kevin, Gimme, even Double D, and going as far as holding Double D's hat and Ed's eyebrow hostage, assuming they must be in on the disappearance of the magazines. The end scene of this episode is an absolute masterclass in visual comedy, because we got the Ed stealing Kevin's bike to get him to talk some sense into Eddy.
My hat, please, thank you!
Eyebrow for Ed!
My magazines!
The bike!
The magazines!
Hat, please!
Eyebrow now!
What everyone wants in this scene is a never-ending cycle, and it's really funny from a conceptual level, but just the cadence of this scene alone is so funny. There's such a timing and energy to it that's executed with perfection. The episode ends with Eddy finally believing that Ed truly hid and lost the magazines, unsuccessfully backtracking his way through the process, and just concussing himself on trees. And while it's not an amazing conclusion for the episode and not really a crazy plot, I think this season especially isn't afraid to just have stuff happen. Like, this almost feels like we got a first act and a second act, maybe part of a third act, but I don't ever finish an episode and say, that's it? I say, wow, that was great. It just always feels so natural and loose, and in a way, that's why this show is so perfect to rewatch, especially in the summer. It kind of embodies that feeling of fun and wackiness without structure. No real scams to talk about here, so let's move on. In Ed Pass It On, the Ed set up a posh restaurant, and although they charge Gimme a little extra just to sit at a table, I can't look at these prices and call this a scam. Like, there's nothing on the menu over 85 cents, though the food is,
Oh boy, I'm starving! Bon appetit! For crying out loud! Ed, you were supposed to use a...
We have yet another callback to Eddy's older brother, whom Eddy reveals demanded a lot of respect from others, unlike Eddy, leading to the main plot of today's episode, which is pretending his older brother's coming home. We see even Kevin scared of Eddy's older brother coming home, and although it's a lie for the episode, every mention of him just builds up the drama and tension of just who exactly this character could be. The neighborhood all grovels for Eddy, except Sarah, who calls his bluff, even ending the episode by showing up at Eddy's room as two kids in a trench coat, aka a basketball jersey, getting Eddy to actually grovel to him/Gimme and Sarah and serve them ice cream. I really like this part where Gimme and Sarah reveal it's the two of them, and Ed unexpectedly comes back to ask what flavor of ice cream Eddy's brother wanted, and this silent head turn gets me every time, like he's so stupid. The restaurant never really served a meal unless you consider Ed food, and the remainder of the episode was Eddy scamming the others for bribes, so yeah, I gotta mark this episode as a scam. In Brother Can You Spare an Ed, Ed has to make a decision of the ultimate temptation, buying fudge for Sarah with the allowance she gave him to buy for her, or buy jawbreakers for the boys. I love that Eddy and Double D are the devil and angel on Ed's shoulders here, like that's such an accurate way to describe their relation to Ed. The temptation of jawbreakers shines through, so Sarah's obviously gonna kill the Eds, but Eddy has a pretty ingenious hustle of offering 25 cents to receive, Ouija? I gotta call this a hustle. Like, sure, the Eds stole money and are doing this to pay back Sarah, and sure, she still has to pry the money from Eddy, but Double D and Ed make an even bigger hustle to end the episode, getting revenge on Eddy by nominating the other Eds for the Ouijas by setting up a seesaw that hits Eddy into a tree. The best part about it is that it only costs a single penny, and it's not too often you see the other Eds actually stand up to Eddy or get revenge on him specifically, but it's always cool to see the other Eds actually stand up for themselves for a change. No pun intended. Episode 74 is The Day the Eds Stood Still, and this episode has always held a special place as one of my favorites. It's kind of the Eds' take on a more horror-themed monster episode, at least before the See and Invaded special, with the scam of the day being the Eds trying to make money by turning Ed into a monster. The scene of Ed becoming the monster here is genuinely kind of scary. Like, this POV from Ed is great, and just hearing his breathing get louder and louder with the screen turning red is a shot you really don't see in the rest of the show. Ed kidnaps the rest of the neighborhood and sticks them to the wall with soggy Chunky Puff cereal, and whenever I see the cereal in this show, it just reminds me of this scene. Like, it's disgusting and terrifying, and probably wasn't a great episode to actually be eating cereal too, and it might sound crazy that cereal can stick someone to a wall, but I don't know. If a random Cheerio or something gets stuck to the side of a bowl, it's literally impossible to remove. You just have to throw it in the dishwasher and pray. You know, that's probably not interesting to anyone in the world besides me, but I just had to share that. So hey, thanks for listening to this video so far. You're honestly goated. Ed's monster illusion is torn away by Sarah, who thinks this was some sort of party she didn't get invited to, as the episode ends with the kids still stuck to the wall, with Sarah desperately trying to remove them, and Ed terrorizing the other kids with his new tissue monster. I don't think the Eds intended this scam to inflict so much pain and damage, but like, it did, so I think I gotta mark this as a scam, if not just a straight up crime. Definitely one of the most memorable episodes for me. I'd honestly love to know how much y'all like it, cause it may not be like a top 5 episode for me, but it's definitely top 5 in memorability for me. In episode 75, If It Smells Like an Ed, this episode starts with a friendship day in the cul-de-sac, and it's actually pretty sweet, like even Kevin's smiling a little. I love this little 3-second animation of the kids dancing with Kevin, whose arms are just being dragged back and forth involuntarily. As usual, the Eds show up and just ruin all the love, with Eddy wedging Gimme, and the most horrific injury of the whole show is that someone smudged Plank's mouth off here. Double D has a rag with blue paint in his back pocket, clearly framing him for the crime, as well as Eddy's hockey stick breaking through this big papier-mâché heart, but for once, the Eds didn't do it. The Eds try to think who could have framed them for these crimes against Gimme, and I like that they can at least acknowledge the whole neighborhood hates them.
Well, Sarah wouldn't have the patience to.
Sarah hates us!
Okay, then there's Johnny.
He secretly hates us.
Saying Johnny secretly hates them is really funny. Like, I could see it, but he's helped them in times of need more often than any other kid by far. The Eds go around the neighborhood trying to solve the mystery of who's been framing them red-footed, but no one's shoe fits, and they try to find who else has a hockey stick, but we only see Gimme, and he hates hockey, revealing his dad forces him to practice. Along with automatically crossing off Gimme, it's kind of funny Rolf's name isn't on the list, like he's just a chill guy and he never hurt his friends. They're seriously more suspicious of Naz and Sarah. The final kicker is a trail of jujubes, like the gummy candy, which I found really weird this real ass candy was just straight up in the show. I guess technically a jujube is a term for a real fruit, so maybe that's why they could get away with this here? I don't know. Anyways, this jujube trail leads straight to the Kanker sisters, where the Eds have to decide who they fear more, an angry mob of the entire neighborhood or the Kankers. And they pick the angry mob, ending up taped to a fence in the alley where they get assorted fruit thrown at them. Gimme reveals now that he was the mastermind behind this all, basically ruining his own day, along with dismembering Plank, all for the revenge against the Eds for wedging him. I feel like some people I know that don't like Gimme see this episode and still dislike him, but I don't know, I think every time he stood up against the Eds, I found it pretty funny and entertaining. But yeah, he's definitely a character you either love or hate. The events of this episode are neither a scam nor a hustle, though one could argue the Eds actually got scammed here, though I do feel they deserved it. Danny Antonucci states this is one of his favorite episodes, and I can definitely see why. It's one of the most elaborate episodes of the show, not just on account of being a two-part special, but it has much more structure than a lot of the other episodes this season, with a very deliberate beginning and end, as well as events happening all throughout behind the scenes that we don't see animated until Jimmy's confession at the end. Despite this being one of Antonucci's favorites, I see way more comments hating on this episode than like any other, and in large part because people feel only Eddy deserved the punishment for messing with Gimme, or that revenge is never the answer. Some of the complaints with this episode make me actually like the episode more though, like complaining that basically everyone was negatively impacted by Jimmy's revenge. Like, yeah, that comes free with your revenge. I don't think the episode's necessarily promoting it, it's just a story of these neighborhood kids that mess with each other, and honestly, if the rest of the neighborhood didn't have times like this where they were kinda bad or mean or maybe even in the wrong, it would make the times the Eds actually win/scam them a lot less enjoyable, I think. Don't Rain on My Ed starts with the Eds creating a peek into the future attraction for Johnny and Plank, and yes, I include Plank because he also has to pay for this. This may be one of the most ethical hustles the Eds have created, like this is genuinely just a cool, fun thing. This is interrupted by the boys learning it's Customer Appreciation Day at the candy store, which means free jawbreakers, but there's only 10 minutes left to get there. Naturally, they encounter a bunch of roadblocks here, like Sarah threatening to tell Mom if Ed doesn't clean up the whole future land they just hustled Johnny with, but the way Ed cleans this up is arguably the funniest moment of the whole season. This episode's just a chaotic collection of hilarious visual gags, like Eddy accidentally voring Kevin in his bike, or trying to escape from the Kankers, but the finale of this episode is one of the most dramatic crescendos of the whole season, with fate itself conspiring against the Eds. Not only is there a windstorm that nearly blows them all away, but Rolf is driving all his chickens down the road, which Double D nearly drowns in, giving Eddy one last chance to redeem himself and save his friend. But even here, he still can't resist the temptation of a free jawbreaker. Honestly, I bet it would taste amazing. We all know anything tastes better when it's free. Eddy tries to jump into the candy store, but the door and store automatically close, either because this whole store is automatically operated, or the adults are invisible. Or this is all in purgatory.
Stop it. Get some help.
But yeah, I love this episode so much. It's one of the most chaotic episodes, and the drama of the chicken drive is one of the best scenes in the entire show. I've never heard of a chicken drive like I've heard of a chicken run, but even when I searched what a chicken drive was, every single result was just what kind of a car does a chicken drive? A coupe. So yeah, if anyone cares to explain if this is like an actual thing, I'd love to know. Despite Eddy's betrayals, the future world's a hustle, so hey, he's got that going for him, I guess. So we move on now to the final episode of season 3, Once Bitten, Twice Ed. Though according to the production of the show, it seems like this episode, along with the 2 before it, were produced as part of season 4. I suppose this is indicated by the change in the logo of the AKA Cartoon Inc. production at the end of each episode, and you know, I never really thought of what on earth this thing is, but it's always kinda creeped me out. Eddy speaks to Ed through a walkie-talkie taped to the back of one of his action figures, proving that with the right advertising, you can manipulate anyone into doing anything, even eating their own mattress.
Excuse me, Ed, but is this your... Good Lord, man!
They test the limits of this manipulation by creating a quote-unquote talking mailbox that convinces Gimme to gather the others and bring them down to the woods for a paid game of raccoon roundup where they shoot Ed dressed as a raccoon with marshmallows. Rolf wants to shoot Ed with his keychain ball thing, but Johnny steps in to save the animals. I gotta admit, when I first started this series of videos, this scam was one of the first that came to mind because the Eds are setting up something really fun for the other kids, though I do wonder if the kids would actually still be here if they admitted it's Ed dressed as a raccoon. I mean, I don't know, I wouldn't want to hurt an actual raccoon. The debate of hustle or scam kinda depends on what you value more, honesty or a good business plan, but as the episode progresses, it gets way more into scam territory. We're dressing the same shooting range with slightly different coats of paint each time, while still trying to manipulate the whole neighborhood with walkie-talkies. Like, they even try to get Wilbur to show up, and he's a pig. Some may argue it's a solid business module and that this kind of advertising may be less intrusive than the ads our computers are cooking up for us based on what it hears us say to each other. But yeah, this is a scam. I want to call it a hustle so bad, and I think it's a super fun concept, but it's just too dishonest. So that's where we end season 3 officially. So let's answer the big question of what happens more this season, scams or hustles. Now, removing the 10 non-applicable entries from this season, we actually have a pretty surprising result of 8 times the Eds were out here hustling and only 7 scams. That's right, according to this very objective ruling, in my opinion, the Eds were arguably more often ethical businessmen than not. Why do we think that is? Maybe it's in part because I naturally lean towards calling any of their schemes a hustle because they look fun and I would have loved stuff like this if I was a bored kid. But I also think the Eds are just way more normal kids than people give credit for, even betraying his friends for cash time and time again. But when the Eds are a collective unit, they're just a trio of kids whose ingenuity is both their biggest strength and their biggest weakness. The julienning of the potatoes is still the best example of this in my opinion. Like, they really can't just peel a potato, but they can invent this giant contraption. It's like they go so far out of their way just to try to be lazy. It's really a fantastic season, maybe even my favorite season so far. Like, everything just got a little better. At the end of the day, I'd love to hear if you'd have a different opinion on any of the scams or hustles. Like, there was definitely a scam here and there I kind of omitted from this that weren't really a focal part of the episode. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I wanted to give a big thanks to my Patreon and Ko-fi supporters, because truly your support helps me much more than you think, so thank you all very much. Alright, I'll see you next week. Bye!